Coming up on Rugby Wrap-Up, Chris Brown, the newly named head coach of Team USA's Women's Sevens program. Brought to you by Irish Rugby Tours, the Rugby Tour specialists, AFIA Sports Training, committed to developing the sporting potential of future players in the US, UK, and across the world. And Dub Pies, Down Under Pies, stop by, say hi, and eat pie. And the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street. Hey everybody, welcome back to Rugby Wrap-Up. Matt McCarthy and Steve Lewis at the Fantasy Sports Network Studio 34 here in New York City talking rugby. Steve, we got a big deal here today, right?
Yeah, Chris Brown, famous man.
Chris Brown, you landed this fish for us.
Not at all, not at all.
Don't you start being shy around me on camera. Steve Lewis, ladies and gentlemen, landed this big fish for us, and this big fish is now the no longer interim, but yet upgraded to head coach of the Team USA Women's Sevens program, Mr. Christopher Brown, everybody. Welcome, Christopher.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Oh, wow. Very, very low-key hello. Chris, Chris, this is show 67 of the Fantasy Sports Network studio version of Rugby Wrap-Up, and you were on show 2, and you were at this seat right to my left here, and it took you 64 weeks to become a full-time head coach in USA Rugby's system. Is that because of your appearance here on Rugby Wrap-Up?
I think it definitely had a big part to play in it, mate. So I'm very grateful for that. So I'm surprised it took us 64 weeks, to be fair, considering where you are with this show.
That's true, and you did kill it on that previous show. But no, in all seriousness, congratulations. But I have a sevens expert. Can anybody here raise their hand if they were a national sevens championship coach? Anyone? Did anyone? Oh, that would be you, Steve.
That would be me. Anyway, on to the questions. Christopher.
Yes, mate.
Congratulations, firstly, on your appointment. It's great. So are you looking forward to now you're head man in your own right, your own program? So what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, very much so, mate. Look, I've been really fortunate to be mentored by a couple of top quality coaches, and I've been waiting for an opportunity where I could kind of dig my teeth in and start to lead my own program. And so this is really exciting for me, and these girls have shown some top quality so far.
Yep, so it's a big year. Obviously, we're going into an Olympic qualification year, and it starts off this weekend in Glendale at Infinity Park. So what is the format there with the women? Is it the same thing? Top 4 go through from the World Series of this year? Or could you explain the qualification process?
Yeah, very much so, mate. It's exactly the same as the men. The top 4 teams will go through automatic qualification, and then the other, there'll be another 7 spots available for the regions around the world, and then Japan will get an automatic entry because of the home nation.
So it mirrors the men's qualification, so 12 teams apiece, same process.
Yeah, exactly the same, mate.
Great. So this week you kick off at Glendale, as we said, and who have you got in your pool? Who's the competition, or who are you worried about most?
We've got England up first, so we've got a little bit of video on them from 2 weeks ago against France in the European Championship, and then we've got China, and then we've got New Zealand. So at least by the time we get to New Zealand, we would have had a bit of a look at them. But of course, you can't not respect any team here. And getting England, which is one of the 2 top nations in the world when it comes to the 15s and the professional game, whether they're young whether half their squad is brand new to the series or not, they'll still have some top quality players there, and we'll be up for it game 1. I'm sure of it, looking at how the girls are going, but they'll definitely be a bit of a handful to start off with.
Tough draw out of the hat. Just moving quickly to your team. So obviously, girls under Richie finished, I think, 4th in the World Cup. Quite a creditable World Cup showing. So what is the composition of the team? Have you lost some players that have retired? Have you brought some new people in? What have you got, and what do you like about it?
Yeah, 100%. Look, no, we've actually been very fortunate. We haven't lost any players. There's been some players that have fought themselves into the 12. We've still got that core 8 or 9 that were heavily involved in Richie's program last season, and they'll play a big part in these first couple of legs. I think what's been exciting is through the club national championships, we've picked up 2 players, Elena Olsen and Stephanie Rivetti, who both played for the women's championship team, the Surfers from San Diego. And then we've also got a young lady Lauren Thean from Santa Barbara, who's come through the age groups that have pushed themselves into that top 12 spots.
Chris, for folks that don't know this, you cut your teeth, or you made a name for yourself really here with the Sevens program on the men's side with Mike Friday and Phil Greening. And in fact, you were there for most of the time and were a big influence on that men's sevens success. What's the difference for you in your approach to the women's program coming off of that? How do you do things differently? What are women's specific things that might be different than the men's program?
I think the big thing for me, mate, is it's been a brilliant 6 years of development for me underneath Mike, and the last 4 years with the USA team. It's been a lot of, I suppose, self-assessment and trying to grow and how I want to deliver and how I want to come across and how effective I'm being in that. So that's been done. It's a continual process. And now coming over to the women, I don't see it being any different in the sense of how I coach. I think with the stage that they're at with their rugby understanding or situational understanding and their ability to execute certain skill sets, I think that's where things will be a bit different, because we'll spend so much more time on that over this first 12 to 18 months, which is where the men, they've been through that, and that's just a lot of housekeeping stuff for them these days, and they're really honing in into getting the rugby understanding and the strategies in place.
On the excellent Pioneers piece on the men's sevens team, Mike was talking about how different players have to be spoken to differently. You can't. Some players need to be barked out a little bit more than others. Others need a softer approach. Mike is not exactly the softest guy on the planet. He's a fire and brimstone kind of guy, like the man to my right here, when he's talking Congress, not when he's coaching. But what's your style? If you had to label it a certain way, what is your coaching style?
I think there's, as Mike has said, there's different ways to approach different players and different situations. And with myself, I firstly want to be relatable. And actually, if you spend more time with Mike in our environment, he's heavily about relationships. So sometimes the perception is not exactly the same as what the reality is. And so for myself, look, it's the relational thing. If I don't have the relationship with these girls, they're not going to listen to me. Whether I'm grumpy with them, whether I'm being gentle, putting an arm around the shoulder, or saying, hey, come on, let's sharpen up, it's just not good enough. It changes consistently. I think on the pitch, it's generally pretty consistent across the board, because you've got 26 athletes. Once you get into the office or into the video analysis area, where you've got 3 or 4 players at a time, generally it's more around the detailed approach of, okay, if asking them questions, asking them, okay, if we end up in a situation again, what options do you have available? What's stopping you from executing here? That's probably, that'll be a big foundation of how we work forward with these girls.
Gentlemen, just hold that thought. We're going to take a quick break and come right back with Chris Brown and Steve Lewis.
If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street.
Been blind since I was 4, and I've never seen a beer commercial or a beer label. None of that stuff influences me. I drink beer because of the taste, and my beer is Pabst Blue Ribbon. It has the taste and the flavor.
What do you think's on the label?
I think there's a naked woman riding on a unicorn, jumping over fire. Oh, that's good beer.
And we are back.
Christopher, in some ways there's less room for error because you have 6 tournaments, right, as opposed to 10 with the men. Is that correct?
Yes, mate.
And bigger gaps in between. Just sort of periodization is a little bit different for you, which is a challenge, but, that's same for all the other teams. That was a comment rather than a question.
That's good. I like that. That was. I'm catching up on the vocabulary right now.
Yeah, but back to the men's program. So A, who's doing your role or filling in for you right now for Mike, who's helping him out on the ground? And B, second part to this is, how much interaction is there between the two squads in terms of, do you grab Mike across for a session or two, or Phil Greening across? great on contact and what have you.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Look, with regards to the men's program, Mike and Phil have started to just split up a little bit initially, so they're coming in at different times, so that there's always a top quality coach on the ground from a rugby standpoint. So that's how it's kind of working at the moment, and they're just finalising what they're going to do post Christmas, etc., for the long term plan. I grabbed Phil last week to do some line-out work with Alev Kelter and a couple of the other ones, which I was grateful for. I think hope that will be the plan. That would be the hope. Mike's been very supportive of my aspirations and this opportunity for me. So I hope that there's the opportunity there. So far, I approached Mike more so on Ben Pinkelman to, hey, is there any way that Pinky can spend 15 minutes a couple of times a week working on line-outs and some of the floor contact skills, as Phil wasn't there at those times when we were actually building into this tournament. So we've actually used a couple of the world-class players that we actually have on the men's side, which have added something great benefit. And I think, too, some of the players on our side, the girls' side, appreciated it because they felt at a peer level, they felt like they could ask certain questions instead of being as intimidated as they might be with a brand new coach.
Since they're all prisoner of sorts in Chula Vista, the men's and the women's programs, do they have like socials and stuff, like a barn dance or something? Do you play the fiddle?
A number of the girls, look, there's a few girls dating the different guys in the team, and I know a number of them hang out on the weekends. They get on pretty well. They're pretty respectful of each other, and which is great to see. And I hope that we'll get closer with the relationships of myself and the men's coaches, if that makes sense.
How's the preparation this week? I mean, I hear the weather would bring tears to a glass eye, is what I hear Denver's like at the moment. Pretty chilly.
We're actually in Colorado Springs, and we're down at the Air Force Base, and that's another 1,000 metres higher from what I understand, and it was 27 degrees yesterday morning at 10:30. So we had to go inside into a big basketball gymnasium and change things up. But look, this morning it was 44, 45 degrees. There's no wind though, and the sun's out, so it's not bad. And over the weekend it's meant to be mid to late 50s, early 60s. So I don't think there'll be any excuse there.
How's Alev Kelter's health?
She's good to go, 100% full go. She's played 2 fully live scrimmages and about 6 full-on contact housekeeping sessions. So she's hungry. She's Alev Kelter. So.
Excellent. I got to ask you a hard question. I know that Steve's going to be shocked by this, but what are the metrics for you? Has anything been handed down from above to say, okay, Chris, you have to win X games, you have to win X tournaments going forward to, right through the Olympics in 2020? Because there hasn't been a lot of that as far as from the outside you can tell. There hasn't been, say, you got to win X, Y, and Z.
There's an expectation that we will finish top 4 this season. And if we don't finish top 4 in the World Series, then it'll be disappointment. From our standpoint, we're focusing a lot more on the key performance indicators, how much possession we hold, how many missed tackles, what's our completion rate. Those sort of numbers across the board, there's probably 15 key indicators that we'll be looking at. And the more those get into a position where they are competing for that 1, 2 or 3 spot on the World Series in those areas, then the results will take care of themselves. So for us, as I say, look, I know top 4 is kind of a non-negotiable based off what I'm being communicated, which is a nice little challenge. I think what the girls have done under Richie this last 12 months especially is they've grown in unity, and they've also their level of application or consistency of application in these last 3 tournaments has been quality. Hopefully what I can bring to the party is more insight on strategic play and positioning and executing the skill sets so that they can actually play that game plan, and then we'll start to push the likes of Australia, France, Canada, and win more of our fair share, and start to really hone in on that top team, which New Zealand's a bit of a step above in consistency at the moment compared to the rest. The expectation is top 4 finish from my director.
Okay,
put it that
all
way.
Right. That's something, right?
Yeah, but you've got to be confident going in here. I mean, sort of knowing some of your personnel there, you got some talent across the board. Tapper, Thomas, Ember. You got some pace there. You got Alev, you got Nicole Heverland, two good ball players. You got some size, Gustaitis, and Jordan Gray. You pretty much got a full package there to work with, plus your newcomers.
And that adds pressure, right? There's an expectation by the American fan that may or may not be privy to a lot of the stuff that goes on, but there is an expectation with these stars that are these blossoming stars that you got to win.
And you're right. I mean, we are very fortunate to have Alev Kauter back fit and healthy. She's a world-class player. She's only 4 years in the game, which is a lot of credit to her, considering her soccer and ice hockey background. And the other names are all valid, as you've shared, and they're X-factor players in different ways. Getting a group of girls to unite and actually utilise their strengths at the right time is the key for me. And that's also on you flip it on the other side, because we're talking about X-factor world beaters in different ways with ball in hand. But if you look at statistics and the way that they defended last year, there was multiple first phase tries scored against them, consistent over chasing and out of position defensively. When they had the ball, which we saw in the World Cup, which we saw in Paris, they were very, very hard to handle. I don't plan to shift the focus there much at all, other than hopefully expand on those attacking positives that they're already doing. But for us to realistically start to control games, we have to sort our defence out, and we have to become a team that doesn't allow first phase tries in, and we have multiple 5-6 phase blocks where it doesn't matter what the attack's throwing at us. We have that confidence and that belief that we can go 5-6 phases without being scored against.
Well, I'll be there, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, Saturday morning, so looking forward to seeing you in action, and wish you all the best, and the girls all the best, obviously. So hopefully a good weekend for the Women's Eagles Sevens.
And if you guys need to relax and get away from sevens, is this Friday night, Michigan at Michigan State, the biggest sports rivalry on the planet. Friday Night Lights, 7 p.m. on Next Level Rugby's YouTube channel. Yours truly will be there in East Lansing. And if you want to watch some college rugby and a great rivalry throughout the years, this is the one. But on that note, thank you, Chris. Congratulations. Thank you, Mr. Steve Lewis. As always, I'm Matt McCarthy on behalf of both of these gentlemen for Rugby Wrap-Up at the Fantasy Sports Network, Studio 34 in Midtown Manhattan, signing off.